following program may contain coarse language, violence, nudity, mature subject matter, or scenes which may not be suitable for all viewers. Viewer discretion is advised.
All Hit Radio.
Welcome to the X Zone, a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. Now, here's your host, Rob McConnell.
And good evening, one and all. This is the X Zone, and yes, I am indeed Rob McConnell. And for the next 4 hours, as I've been doing for the past 33 years, you are going to be my guests as together we're going to cross the time-space continuum to this place that I call the X Zone. It's a place where people dare to believe and dare to be heard. It's a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. And we come to you Monday through Friday from 10 p.m. Eastern until 2 a.m. Eastern, right here on the X Zone Broadcast Network, Talkstar Radio Network, Mutual Broadcast Network, and Channel 54 on Simul TV. Now, if you'd like to send me an email, it's xzone at xzoneradiotv.com, on all social media sites, X Zone Radio TV. And before we get to our first guest tonight, which is our good friend GWILDA WIYAKA, the host of Mission Evolution on the X Zone Broadcast Network, I'd just like to say a little bit about our guest last night. The first guest last night, his name was, let me see if I can remember it right, Scott Taylor. Now he puts doctor in front of his name, but he's not a real MD or a PhD. He's kind of an educational doctor. And he's a believer of everything that academia does is right. Medical profession and science profession are wrong. Well, after talking to him for nearly an hour last night, I think that science is right, medicine is right, and academia is wrong. Because, wait a minute, wasn't it academia who told us that Christopher Columbus discovered America when he really didn't? It was actually the Vikings, followed by the drunken monks who missed the stop to Dublin, who actually discovered America. So how can we believe anything that academia tells us? We've had many shows here where we've discussed alternative history, hidden history, and so on, that goes to prove beyond a shadow of a doubt academia is not trustworthy. I found his stories a little far-fetched, especially since there's no way of collaborating anything that he said. So when it comes to the X Zone scoring of shotgun blasts, 10 being the highest and 1 or no shotgun blast being the lowest, we decided that last night's interview with Scott Taylor was minus 1,254 shotgun blasts. There, I said it. On tonight's show, like I said, our first guest tonight is GWILDA WIYAKA on hour number 2, which is 11 till midnight Eastern. We have, let me see, Sandy Athey. She's going to be joining us. She is a psychic and an intuitive. Hour number 3, which is midnight until 1 o'clock, is going to be with Jim Andre. He is a former law enforcement officer who now investigates UFOs and UAPs. And in tonight's final hour from 1 a.m. until 2 a.m., Dan Baldwin will be joining us to talk about his Psychic Detective Handbook. All this tonight here on the X Zone. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to take our magic carpet ride and go all the way to Colorado, where we are joined by the one and only GWILDA WIYAKA. And GWILDA, great seeing you again tonight, hon. How are you?
I'm doing well. Good to see you as well.
Thank you. I know that you watched a little bit of the first episode last night with Scott Taylor.
Actually, I watched the whole thing.
Oh, good. What did you think?
Well, quite a bit of what he said had validity from what I know from a shamanic perspective.
Okay.
But as far as I was kind of with you, there seemed to be some shaky stuff going on there. Yeah. And you have better senses about that than I do. So, but he did have some things to say that did agree with what I've been taught and have experienced shamanically. So,
well, what did you agree with him on?
When he was talking about shared death experience, that is a spontaneous occurrence of what actually is intentionally done when someone is trained to be a psychopomp and help a person cross. And
When
so,
somebody is trained.
right. So
Have you
his
ever
his experience was
spontaneous?
spontaneous. Right.
So did it ring true with you?
His experience, I didn't read into it particularly. I mean, it
Mhm.
sounded feasible with what I know shamanically.
Sure. Yeah, I understand
Um,
that, and I
you know,
appreciate that. And
yeah.
by the way, I forgot to tell everybody some important information. This portion of the X Zone is being brought to you by Beautiful Mind Coffee. www.beautifulmindcoffee.ca. Um, I found it a little hokey, to be honest with you. He started off strong, and he was a salesman. And as soon as he said I used to be a salesman, it was like, red flag. Woo-hoo. Then he was, I think he said that he had something to do with the Monroe Institute or the Rhine Institute. And then we went into the shared death experience, and he found it very touching. And I didn't know if he was being sincere or if it was just good acting on his part.
He
When
did
it came,
present well, and it made you a little nervous, didn't it? Yeah.
it did, it did.
Yeah. Mhm.
But anyway, let's see. A number of our viewers found it to be less than credible. And a couple of viewers said he should have stuck to selling because he's great at it. Okay, so Gwilda, my dear friend, hostess with the mostess of Mission Evolution, what are we talking about tonight? I understand it's hidden devastation of spiritual illness.
Yes.
Okay, explain, Lucy.
Well, spiritual illness can kind of sound like a religious problem.
Well, yeah.
Yeah. But actually, by spiritual illness, what we mean shamanically is there's 4 levels to our being: physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual. And they kind of blend into each other and go out beyond that.
Mhm.
So the spiritual aspect is the energetic aspect. So there, physical is in matter. And
Mhm.
then you don't see the emotions, but you see the results of the emotions. And
Right?
then we know mental goes on, but we don't see it going on. But
Oh,
then
you
by
could
the
have seen
time
it
you
last night on my show.
but then by the time you get into the energetic or what we're calling spiritual,
Mhm.
um, then you're dealing with a higher frequency or a more expansive frequency, and that's where spiritual illness can happen. And illness impacts on all 4 levels, and at this point where we treat is 3.
Yeah.
And so I'm not saying that spiritual illness is more important or less important than any of
Mhm.
the other, but they work together. And so the way they interface is very, very interesting.
Would this also be the realm where something like a psychic attack or a psychic draining takes place?
Spiritual illness makes you vulnerable to a psychic draining,
Okay.
but then the other is a whole other topic where you're looking at the vampiric type of personality that has pretty strong gifts, and they feed off of other people, and that's a topic for another topic.
Sure. So what can be affected by spiritual illness?
This is what's surprising.
Okay.
Everything.
Mm.
If person, place, thing, animal, situation, anytime an energetic balance is disrupted, you can have a spiritual illness. So your computer gets a spiritual illness. I can't fix your computer, though. I want to make that
Mm.
very clear.
So that explains all the problems I've been having with Bell Canada. Spiritual illness.
Illness, yeah. They need a next. No, I won't say that.
In all fairness, now, I'm the kind of guy that tears things apart when they deserve it, but I'm also the kind of guy that gives kudos when things are fixed. And I must say that Bell Canada was very diligent, and the problem was totally rectified. So we are
Fantastic.
good buddies again. Mind you, they wouldn't give me a cut on my bill, but I
I
tried.
love the way that happens. You pay
Yeah,
for a service, you don't get it, you don't get a refund.
yeah, you figure that out. Um, are men more prone to spiritual illness, or are ladies more prone, or is it
It's just like
equal across the board?
it's just like physical illness. I think just because of our gender roles, women are more vulnerable to different spiritual illnesses than men are, but they're both vulnerable.
Okay, both vulnerable.
Mhm.
How about animals?
Absolutely. Yes, I treat a lot of animals, and they respond much quicker too, because they don't get as far out of balance as we do because they're pretty grounded. They're in nature, or they're of a natural order, and we've kind of gotten a long ways away from that, and so we tend to get further out of balance. It's passed down the generations, and we do see that in, like, say, dog breeds, where there's an imbalance. It's passed down the generations because we've interbred them so much.
So where does this spiritual illness start? Does it start in the heart? Does it start in the throat? Or how does it work, Wilda?
Well, it's like a chicken and the egg kind of thing, okay? But to every physical illness, there's a spiritual component. And to every spiritual illness, there can develop a physical component. Because the spiritual realm is moving at a faster frequency, it can change more quickly. So you
Okay.
can start to get out of balance in the energetic realm and it gets corrected. And so it doesn't necessarily step itself all the way down and manifest physically. However, if something has manifest physically, you can bet there's a spiritual component to it.
Is there any connection, and I'm being serious here, believe it or not, is there any connection between this spiritual illness and the continuous strains of COVID-19 that we're experiencing? Because here in Ontario, we're looking at possibly locking down again because of the number of people who are, suffering from not only COVID-19, but this new strain of flu, and children are just suffering, and the emergency and trauma centers are filled with children with this respiratory disease now.
Mm. Yeah, I'm having just got over COVID. It's nothing nice.
No, it's not.
It's not nice. There's absolutely a spiritual component to it. Now, I don't want to get political and I don't want to make rash statements, but there's something about, because I've been working with the spiritual component of the COVID virus for people, and it doesn't feel natural. Every other virus that I've ever worked on feels natural. This feels really distorted.
Really? Yeah.
And it's harder to bring back balance on the spiritual level, particularly when a person's in the throes of it. If we can, come closer to bringing back balance, then that can, because it adds up. If you've got a spiritual imbalance, a physical imbalance, emotional imbalance, a mental imbalance, then you're really in trouble. You correct any one of those and you're starting to gain on the problem. Okay.
Gotcha.
And so I'll be working on the spiritual, but when I work with people with COVID, myself included, it just doesn't feel natural, Rob. It just doesn't. And that's kind of scary to me.
Yeah. You and I have to take our first break. Please stand by. Next on Nation, our guest this hour is GWILDA WIYAKA. She is the hostess of Mission Evolution radio show here on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, www.missionevolution.org. And for more information on GWILDA and the courses you can take from GWILDA, visit findyourpathhome.com. The X-Zone with yours truly, Rob McConnell, will continue on the other side of this break. Don't go away.
Beautiful Mind Coffee is delicious coffee your brain will love. Made with ethically sourced 100% Arabica coffee grown in the volcanic soil of the Tolima, Colombia region, Beautiful Mind Coffee is roasted and ground in small batches to ensure each bag contains a wonderful full-bodied artisan coffee. Beautiful Mind Coffee contains herbal ingredients to aid in boosting your daily mental clarity and focus. Maca root powder, green tea extract and American ginseng have all been selected for their ability to support good brain health. Taking care of your brain's health now can help delay or prevent the onset of cognitive dysfunction, including dementia, Alzheimer's, and more general memory loss as you get older, just by enjoying the delicious flavor of our roasted coffee and herbal ingredients found exclusively in Beautiful Mind Coffee. For more information on Beautiful Mind Coffee, visit us online at www.beautifulmindcoffee.ca. Beautiful Mind Coffee is now available at amazon.ca.
smashing, isn't it?
Breaking things over there again, huh?
Yeah. Hey, listen, nobody ever said I was good with, construction stuff. Gwilda Wiyak is our guest. www.missionevolution.org is her website, and you can listen to Gwilda every Tuesday from 1 o'clock until 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And then you can also go to her website, missionevolution.org, to listen to all her past shows. Are there any kinds of spiritual illnesses that mimic physical illnesses, or can we actually say that a spiritual illness is a physical illness, whether it be physiological or mental?
A spiritual illness absolutely lines up with physical illnesses. Like I said, the spiritual illness tends to show itself first,
Mhm.
and we can make adjustments. We feel off balance. We're having a tough time. Pretty soon we start getting angry about stuff. And if we stop ourselves right there and go, I'm not really in a balanced way, and kind of go inward and make some adjustments, well, then it never has to break out on the physical level. But so it tends to, things come and go much more rapidly and mutate quickly at the spiritual level. So we can correct it quickly there. By the time it works its way into the physical, then it's kind of cemented. But there are definite relationships between a spiritual illness and a physical illness, or say, an emotional illness or a mental illness. A person that has become extremely fragmented because of childhood abuse, and
Right.
say they have 5 or 6 different adults in the family that all of them have their own way of abusing them or blowing off or this or that, will sometimes develop multiple personality disorder so that they can cope with each individual. And on the spiritual level, what they do, on the mental level, they compartmentalize. On the spiritual level, what they do is they shift in and out of frequencies. They kind of like a chameleon. They take different frequencies to present to whoever's there at the time to stay safe. And then that becomes a default setting. And so now they are a multiple at the spiritual level, at the emotional level, at the mental level, and of course it manifests physically. And we've seen it physically to the point, and these are absolute documented studies, where a person will be diabetic in one personality and not in another. So it's very, very fragmented, and that's an extreme case, but that's an example of how it can take place.
So how do you tell if the illness is spiritual or physiological?
Well, I believe it starts with a with a spiritual imbalance,
Mhm.
and then comes all the way down to physiological. Now, the only time that there might be an exception to that is when the disorder, the physical disorder, is caused from, say, an automobile accident. Okay, then it trickles out the other direction. However, there's a spiritual component of the push pull, the natural what draws things into you and pushes things
Right.
away at the spiritual level that might have caused the accident in the first place. So they really interrelate so tightly. It's really hard to tell which came first, the chicken or the egg. But when you have a spiritual illness and it starts to manifest, the sooner you treat it, the better. If you treat it on the physical, emotional, and mental, and you still aren't quite there, you can bet there's an untreated spiritual component. And a lot of people say, I've never been the same since such and such happened. I've
Mhm.
gone to counseling, I've done this, I've done that. And when they get to that point, oftentimes a soul retrieval or a spiritual healing will make all the difference in the world.
So how do you treat a spiritual illness?
It depends on what it is. If the spiritual illness is caused from, like you were talking about, people latching on and
Yeah.
sucking, or people saying, casting negative inundations. Say you live around
Mhm.
somebody that just constantly criticizes you, whether it's verbal or not,
Mhm.
energetically, it's impacting you. And if they've picked a particular body part. So one time I had this client that was brought to me. He was a little boy and he had these ear infections. They couldn't seem to stop them. A lot of pain. They couldn't find the medical cause. They'd treat it and it'd keep coming back.
Hmm.
And so finally someone suggested the mother bring him to me, which she did. And she brought both children in. And he had a little burr haircut and his little ears stuck out. He was the cutest thing. And his older sister, you know how older sisters or older brothers can be kind of jealous of the new one.
Now,
She, She no, haven't figured that one out at all. I'll tell your brother. So
Please, please go right ahead.
so she was glaring at him, and I could tell she was glaring at the back of his head, and I said, "What are you looking at?" She says, "His ears, they're stupid." And I went, "Oh, we have a clue." Okay. And so actually I had to work with the family in that regard, because the problem was not the little boy's ears. The problem was the little sister putting the negative inundations on his ears by thinking bad things about them all the time. So
Wow.
after it seems outrageous, but it actually worked
Mm,
to talk to her about how she felt and dotty, send her to counseling, and then do what we call an extraction. So when you're getting negative inundations, it's causing a imbalance at the physical level. It can cause localized pain or illness
mm.
physically. And so as a shamanic practitioner, you go in and adjust the frequency, and that can be done with something that looks like Reiki, or it can be done something that looks like a shamanic extraction, but it'll correct that imbalance, and then the healing has to start and continue until it can work its way through this time instead of reoccurring with the illness.
So let me try to understand. Is this psychosomatic or is it real?
Both. They actually break out with physical illnesses around a place that has been targeted in them. Um, I think this is a huge lesson in that we have so much more energetic power than we understand, and how important it is to check ourselves when we start casting negative thoughts towards other people, because it does have over long term, it does
Mhm.
have its effect. So if you're living with someone and they're constantly on you, you can feel yourself being drained, you can feel yourself not as strong, and that's why, because it's impacting you first at the spiritual level, and then it starts trickling down, and pretty soon your body just can't maintain.
Sounds like stress.
It is a form of stress, absolutely it is.
But are we putting a spiritual name on an actual psychological problem? Could spiritual illnesses be nothing but psychological problems or physiological problems that have yet to be detected?
I think I think that they're all connected, okay,
Mhm.
but by the time it hits the body, it's come down to a physical level where it's manifesting, and that's
Well,
slower to heal. But I think that they're all related. I don't think that you can have a mental problem and not be impacting your body. I don't think you can have an emotional problem and not have it impacting your body and your mental state.
yeah,
And the
I
same thing
agree.
is,
I agree with you. But what I'm trying to say here
Mhm.
is that is it possible that there is no such thing as a spiritual illness? All it is a yet to be discovered emotional problem in the person, or a physiological problem, or a mental problem. And because at the time we don't know what's going on, it gets clicked with a label of spiritual illness.
All I can do is speak from my experience, because there
Mhm.
have not been enough studies done on this. So all I have is my objective experience over 40 years of being in practice. And I have doctors sending people to me
Mhm.
quite frequently when everything that they've done on all of the other three levels doesn't change, or doesn't totally cure the situation. And if I can tweak the energetic aspect of it, then the other things can have an effect and the person can heal. We've seen that over and over and over again.
But we've
And that's
also
why I
but
have a referral base. But
but we've
I
also
personally,
seen but
go
we've
ahead.
also seen, Gwilda, the power of suggestion is a great tool in medicine. So if
Yes.
somebody says, well, I can't figure out what it is, I'm going to send you to a shaman, automatically the person would assume that the shaman is more powerful than the doctor is. And could this in its very own right be why the cure seems to be a spiritual illness, and instead of the illness that has been properly diagnosed by the medical physician?
I'm not sure I understand your question. Could you try
All right,
me again?
sure. Is it possible that spiritual illnesses is nothing but a bunch of phooey?
I don't believe that simply because of
Mhm.
my experience, but I have no way of proving otherwise.
How can you prove that spiritual illness actually exists?
I have no way of proving that.
So how do we know that it is in fact a spiritual illness? What I'm trying to do is get some clarity on how we can take something that seems rather woo-woo-ish that is actually real. Now, how can we say that something from the spiritual realm, if you believe in the spiritual realm, can actually affect the physical body? Now, we've seen this in movies with exorcisms. We've seen it in movies with possessions. But we've also found out that a lot of these things can be explained because of a mental illness or a physiological illness that has yet to be detected, that there is no spiritual aspect. So when somebody says a spiritual illness, how do we give it credibility?
Okay, let's break it down just a little bit further. If a child lives under high power lines,
Mhm,
I can't even remember the numbers that they're more likely to get leukemia
mhm.
than a child that does not.
Right.
The high power lines never touch them.
It's the
It's
electromagnetic field. Okay. All right.
exactly.
Okay.
And
So we
that's
know, so
where the
how can,
spiritual illness happens, is in the
but
electromagnetic field
we
first.
know, the cause of that is the electrical power lines.
Mhm.
So how can we just say, giving it a blanket uh, diagnosis of spiritual illness because we don't understand something? That's what,
I Yeah, I don't
hmm,
give it a blanket. I personally know that we have an energetic level that if it's out of balance, it's going to impact the rest of us at some point to a certain degree.
but
Okay.
once again, can we prove this?
Yes, the
How?
electromagnetic field around our body
No,
has been
I
well
yeah,
established.
I understand that. I understand that. But just because your electromagnetic field is off kilter, can we prove that actually causes the body to have some sort of real legitimate physiological problem?
The electrical wires
Mhm.
cause the child's
Yeah, I
electromagnetic
understand
field to
that.
go
I
out of balance
understand that.
and they
I
get
understand that.
leukemia.
I
There's
understand
one
that.
there's one example. That's one
No, it's
example that
not. No,
has
it's
been
not. No,
proven.
it's not. No, it's not. No, it's not. The example you're giving is proof that it's not a spiritual illness, that it's actually an illness caused by,
I see where we're
yeah,
having trouble.
right.
Where we're having trouble is in logistics. Remember, I said spiritual illness. I'm not talking about ghosts. I'm
Hmm.
not talking about entities. I'm not
Hmm.
talking about anything like that. Okay,
Okay.
those are all metaphors.
Hmm.
What I'm talking about is our electromagnetic field, our electromagnetic part of our being.
Yeah.
When that gets disrupted, it has an impact on us physically, eventually. It doesn't always, but under long, prolonged, or intense um, assault
Hmm.
of some sort, then it does have an effect on us physically. And the example I gave of the leukemia is a perfect example.
Oh, it
We're
is,
not,
and
yeah, we're
it's
not talking
legitimate
about
as well.
ghosts. Yeah,
It's a
we're not talking.
legitimate diagnosis. We know
Right.
this.
And we're not talking about ghosts or spirits or woo-woos at all. We're
Hmm.
just talking the energetics, the energetic health of the
Okay.
physical body.
So
That's
why
all.
is it called spiritual then if we know it's electromagnetic?
Well, because that's the way it's stated, and that's why I tried to describe it to start out with. That's what it's generally called. And that's why I
By
said it's
who?
not a religious problem. It's the common term in the shamanic community, spiritual illness. Okay. And what
But
I'm
that
trying to do is demystify that because it's not woo-woos and it's not ghosts.
I don't know. I'm having a hard time with this one, Golda. We'll be back on the other side of this break. Don't go away.
So I was watching the X Zone TV channel last night when I was abducted by aliens, and they kept repeating to me over and over again, simultv.com, simultv.com.
What's simultv.com?
That's what I asked them. They had it written on the side of their UFO.
How do you spell that?
UFO.
No, I mean simultv.com.
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 Right. simultv.com.
Interesting that you were abducted by aliens in a simultv.com UFO last night.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. Now that you mention it, I remember now last night I was awakened from a deep sleep. My great-grandmother was standing there. She said she'd come from the hereafter to tell me about simultv.com. She even spelled it out for me. simultv.com, sonny boy.
simultv.com.
simultv.com, sonny boy.
Wow.
Yeah.
Guys, you'll never guess what my psychic guru just told me.
simultv.com.
Exactly. Are you guys psychic too?
Of course.
We all know about simultv.com. simultv.com.
And we're back. Welcome, everybody. This is the X Zone. I am Rob McConnell. And we're coming to you tonight on the X Zone Broadcast Network, Talkstar Radio Network, Mutual Broadcast Network, and Channel 54 on Simul TV. GWILDA WIYAKA is our guest. We're in a bit of a spiritual discussion, I guess we can call it.
Let's call it an energetic discussion.
Not new age, but shamanic practitioner meets inquisitive journalist. Looking at, I'm having a problem with why we have to stick to the old way of thinking. For example, you called it spiritual. Now we understand it's more of a electromagnetic deviance in our body's electromagnetic field. So why don't we just call it that? Why did it take a half hour to get to that point?
Apparently, I wasn't being clear enough. I would like, my point is to bridge the two, because it's been considered a spiritual illness, but spiritual was the electromagnetic fields. I mean, we know about electromagnetic fields now. They didn't know about them then. They just called them spiritual.
So why do we have to carry that on? And why don't we just get rid of the old and continue with the new?
I'm good with that.
That makes more sense to me than us going through a half-hour discussion trying to understand what the hell we were talking about. And here we were talking about the electromagnetic field. And I can understand going back in time where they couldn't see something, so they couldn't understand it. And of course, they were heavy into tradition as well as into spirituality. So they say, hey, we can't see it. It causes sickness. It's got to be spiritual. It's like the old gypsy hoax, the old gypsy curses and so on. Okay, so now that we understand that we're talking about an electromagnetic field, how do we rectify that? How do we put the electromagnetic field back into sync where it should be and get it away from the out of alignment that causes these illnesses that were once referred to as spiritual illnesses? How do we do that?
Okay, so the shamanic practitioner, whether they understood what they were electromagnetically or not, over the years, over the eons, developed rituals that helped them manage their personal frequency. When they could manage their personal frequency, they could then present that to the electromagnetic magnetic field, to the magnetic field of the client, and set up a resonance with an equal but opposite frequency that would counterbalance the imbalance. Okay, that's the logistics of it.
So how would they do that? How would they do it? How would they actually deviate, or how would they get the electromagnetic field to deviate from the negative posture to the positive posture?
Well, negative and positive is a little misleading. Let's call it balanced from imbalanced, okay? Because there's negative and positive presence no matter what.
But if we're talking about an electromagnetic field, we're talking about a positive pole and a negative pole.
Rotating around a neutral, right?
So how does a person make that shift happen?
You mean the practitioner?
Yeah, person.
Okay,
practitioner.
So what the practitioner does is they have worked enough within themselves
Mhm.
that they have a fairly wide range of frequency that they can access within their own electromagnetic field. This is done through ritual and through shamanic trance. So they go into an altered state of consciousness and they go through a particular ritual, which automatically shifts their frequency to do this. So it's like, yes, it's they've done it for eons, and
How d
unfortunately, a lot of people with very little to no training
Mhm.
will claim to be able to do this, and they do.
Mhm.
Maybe they help, and maybe they don't. But the but the true shaman were very proficient at it, and they could heal person, place, or thing on the energetic level through aligning with it, offering a resonance to counterbalance the imbalance that the person, place, or thing are suffering from, and make a correction. And that's done through a shamanic journey trance and through ritual. And it's just to help the person focus their natural ability to shift their own frequency. That's all it's for, the ritual or the trance.
So it sounds like Reiki.
Reiki's a form of it, absolutely. There's a modern day form of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or therapeutic touch. Nurses use that all the time. There's another form of it.
Mhm.
And they can stop the misfiring nerves when there's been an accident or surgery by putting their hands on either side and offering a flow of balanced energy, and it settles the nerves right out. Nurses do it all the time.
Well, so do other people. Mothers do that with their children as soon as they touch them or hold their
Absolutely.
hand.
Yeah.
So it
Or they
doesn't
bump their
seem
head, they rub it,
well,
it's just a
it
natural
doesn't
thing.
seem to be
Yeah.
such a mystery.
And it's not, but they've made a mystery out of it. I mean, a lot of people have made a lot of woo-woo out of it. And that's what I would like
Mhm.
to counteract a little bit here.
So why don't we find modern names for everything and progress as a knowing society instead of a society that still has to have spirituality some way attached to everything in order to validate it? Why don't we just use different names? Why don't we just get modern? Do we have to hang on to the past?
A rose by any other name.
Not really.
No, I'm fine with different names for it.
Hmm.
It's just that everybody has to find some names and agree. And that's one of the things that Reiki's done is it has come up with a new name for the on hands part of this work. And it's a modern term, and they say, well, I put the energy there and it goes where it needs to go.
Hmm.
Okay, a Reiki practitioner will tell you this. But they get um, activations. They get spiritual activations, as they call them, to be able to do Reiki. Now, I don't
Now,
think that's
there's that
necessarily.
word again,
There it
spiritual.
is again. That's what I'm saying. It's in there. That's
But
I'm
does it
not
have to
arguing.
be? But does it have to be in there, or are we
No, I don't
making
think so.
mountains out of molehills, or do we keep the mysticism alive because it gives one power over another person that they can spiritually move things around? Is it all like a Barnum and Bailey act?
I don't view it that way, but I understand what you're saying, and I see people that use it that way,
Hmm.
and I object to that. I think it's has no integrity whatsoever,
So,
and
so
I'd
how,
like to
what
see
do you
that
do?
stop.
So, what do you do that is different from the sideshow acts?
I go by the ancient principles in that I've
Hmm.
learned to work with my personal frequency to keep myself as clear as I can, to keep myself as balanced as I can,
Okay.
so that I can then offer balance back to my clients' electromagnetic field. And I have to be pretty darn careful what I expose myself to as far as my diet, as far as where I live,
Mhm.
everything, to stay at the level that my field then can be have anything positive to offer, have anything helpful to offer.
So
That's
when you're doing one of your sessions and you're putting somebody back into balance, their
mhm,
electromagnetic field back into balance,
mhm.
do you do this in person? Do you do it over the phone? How do you do it?
I can do it over the phone. I can do it in person.
How can you do it over the phone if it how do you gauge the other person's electromagnetic fields, and how can you manipulate them over the phone?
Well, because our electromagnetic fields extend beyond our bodies. And everything out there has an electromagnetic field. The tree has an electromagnetic field. The sun
Right,
has an
right,
electromagnetic. The earth has an electromagnetic field.
right.
How I believe it works, and I can't prove
Okay.
this, but how I believe it works is that my electromagnetic field connects with that of the earth and then connects with that of the person through my intent and my connection with them. Like, say, for instance, you're my dear friend. If something's going on with you, my
hmm
heart goes out to you, or I pray for you, or
Right.
I send good energy your way. That has an effect. We've proven prayer does make a difference. Is it psychosomatic? We don't know. But if it fixes stuff, if it helps stuff, we keep praying, right? So, so we know that prayer works at a distance, and
hmm
the mechanics behind it, I suspect, are the X points that are formed when two electromagnetic fields cross. NASA has
Mm.
found those to be um, shortened spaces between time and space, and they're out there where the sun's field crosses the Earth's field. They've got all sorts of probes out there right now trying to find one of those wormholes, but they're random. They don't know where they show up. I think that our intent can choose them and move us through it to where we want to go.
Sounds more like the placebo effect.
Might be. You never know.
We'll be back on the other side of this break. Don't go away.
Beautiful Mind Coffee is delicious coffee your brain will love. Made with ethically sourced 100% Arabica coffee grown in the volcanic soil of the Tolima, Colombia region, Beautiful Mind Coffee is roasted and ground in small batches to ensure each bag contains a wonderful full-bodied artisan coffee. Beautiful Mind Coffee contains herbal ingredients to aid in boosting your daily mental clarity and focus. Maca root powder, green tea extract and American ginseng have all been selected for their ability to support good brain health. Taking care of your brain's health now can help delay or prevent the onset of cognitive dysfunction, including dementia, Alzheimer's, and more general memory loss as you get older, just by enjoying the delicious flavor of our roasted coffee and herbal ingredients found exclusively in Beautiful Mind Coffee. For more information on Beautiful Mind Coffee, visit us online at www.beautifulmindcoffee.ca. Beautiful Mind Coffee is now available at amazon.ca.
Welcome back, everyone. We started off talking about spiritual illness. It was actually, we're talking about the electromagnetic field, brought it from the past into the present, which I love doing because I think that a lot of the mysteries of days gone by are continued into a modern society to keep mysticism alive. You know what I mean? Because we don't want to know what's really behind the curtain, because it's more exciting not to know who or what's behind that curtain. I can understand that. But I also think that in a modern day, we need to be honest, we need to be truthful, and we need to bring all the information up front. Not taking anything away from those who believe, because people have the right to believe in what they want to believe. And like you and I were saying, well, you were saying, Wilda, that, if it is the placebo effect, as long as it works, it works. To me, there has to be more validation. To me, we have to take things out of the darkness and bring everything into the light. So how can we do that if there are so many ways of the old that are still carried on in today's world? How do we bring, for example, the shamanism, for example, how do we bring that into the present so that people do not misunderstand the meanings? Like, for a half hour, I totally misunderstood what you were talking about. So how do we stop that from happening? How can we be more clear with people and say, it's, instead of calling it a spiritual illness, call it something wrong with their electromagnetic field. Well, why don't we do that? Why is everything still a little bit ancient?
Well, my mission in life, one of them, if you will, is to do exactly that. I'm a precept for the University of Colorado School of Medicine, and that's what I'd like to do. I'm trained in the ancient ways, and I'm also trained in a certain amount of modern medicine. And my goal is to pull the two of them together so we can weed out the woo-woo. And there's way too much of it, and it has people throwing out the baby with the bathwater. A lot of people, like you say, are using the old terms and the old, and they do the sleight of hand, and they really don't know what they're doing anyway.
Right.
And wave some sage around, and pound their chests a little bit and feel self-important. And I think that that's criminal, absolutely criminal. So it is my intention, to whatever way I can help, to bridge the two, but I have to know the two to bridge them. And so I do come from the ancient form, but I see where it absolutely interfaces with science. And the more studies we can get going. Now, we had some studies done on me, and we've had them done on other people, where they take the brainwave test and watch what happens when we go into trance. Well,
Okay.
boy, that was demystifying. Okay, because it was pretty clear. You're in every day, you're in beta. You use this ritual to go into trance, you drop into alpha and clear into theta sometimes. So basically, you're going into a dream state and accessing information. Well, we all know we can have precognitive dreams and this and that, but that was just one test, and it didn't have what do we want to say? It didn't have what do you call it when you have a control group. It didn't have a control group. They just wanted to see what happened when they were
Right.
testing me. And they've tested a lot of other people, but it's so remote that there isn't the money out there to get the scientific tests, the medical tests done to really have the data to be able to say this is exactly what it is.
Sounds like daydreaming.
Yeah, and some of it is. Very much so. Yeah.
Time has come, my friend, when I must say so long for you tonight. Please let our listeners know how they can find out more about you and your websites, your books, courses, your videos, your apple pies, your strawberry muffins.
Oh, those are good. And if you play your cards right, I might make you one someday.
All right.
Well, you can find out about my shamanic work on findyourpathhome.com. My classes are there as well, as are my sessions, my personal sessions. I'm host of Mission Evolution radio show, and that's played on the X-Zone Radio, XZB and .net. It's also available at missionevolution.org, and my teachings, Stairway to Heaven vignettes, TV vignettes, are available on Simul TV, as well as on stairwaytoheavenmedia.com. You can get the archives there.
All right, so I will be seeing you next Tuesday as your guest, I believe, is Larry Lawson.
Oh, yes. And you too had better be nice to me.
No guarantees. Until then, take care of yourself. Have a great weekend. And thanks so much for coming on and helping me better understand and putting the spiritual illness in a very simplistic form so that I, and I'm sure many others, now understand. Thank you.
Thank you for sticking with me so that we could do that together.
All right, you take care, my dear friend.
You too.
All right, Exo Nation, I'll be back at the top of the hour, as our guest will be Sandy Athey. We're going to be talking about her being a psychic intuitive. All this and more as the X-Zone continues with yours truly, Rob McConnell, from our broadcast center and studios in St. Catharines, Ontario, Canada. Don't forget, I'm always open to receiving your emails, good, bad, or indifferent. www.xzoneradiotv.com is the website. Send me your email to xzone@xzoneradiotv.com. While we go to the top of the hour, I'm going to get myself another pot of Beautiful Mind coffee. www.beautifulmindcoffee.ca.